Welcome to this new series on Program for Planning for College. My name is Robin Groel, and I have worked with college-bound students and parents for nearly three decades. During this time, the world of college admissions has been ever-changing, and in many ways has grown increasingly complex. It is a maze for information and requirements that today's high school students must navigate to develop their plans for college. Our nation recognizes the role that higher education plays in order for our citizens to be competitive and find success in today's marketplace. But high school students aspire to attend college and attain a college degree. With over 3,000 colleges and universities in the United States, nearly 50 of them in the state of Florida, our country provides young people with the widest range of college choices than any other nation on earth. This series will include a number of speakers sharing tips on preparing for college, finding the right college, preparing their college application, getting accepted, financing a college education, and the parent's role. Our topic for this segment is today's college landscape, thinking outside the box of the GPA and SAT. The American college experience is far more than a series of courses that lead to an undergraduate degree. For most traditionally aged students, this includes a vast array of out-of-class activities aimed at personal, social, athletic, political, and community development. Helping students identify their strengths, explore their interests, understand their learning styles, and matching these personal qualities to the college settings that best suit them is an essential step in not only getting into college, but also succeeding once they get there. In essence, finding fulfillment inside and outside the classroom will make all the difference for undergraduate success. Our guest speaker today is Peter Van Buskirk, author of Winning the College Admissions Game, Strategies for Students and Parents. I met Peter over 25 years ago when we both worked in college admissions. Peter went on to become the director and then the dean of college admissions and financial aid at Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He also served as the athletic director and vice president for the provost. Currently, Peter serves as an advocate for a student-based approach to planning for college through his company TAG, The Admissions Game. He hosts a weekly blog and is a contributor to the U.S. News and World Report. He is a frequent guest speaker for area schools, including St. Stephen's Episcopal School, where I served as director of college counseling, and most recently at Pineview. Teenagers are often asked about what college they plan to attend. Sometimes these questions come as early as middle or even elementary school. In all cases, students want to attend a good college. 25 years is a long time to be in admissions. What made you decide to do what you're doing now, Peter?
Good question, Robin. I really enjoyed my experience in college admission. I had the opportunity to grow professionally and personally and to see the world many times over. It was always an interesting experience for me to be able to participate in the shaping of a new community that would enter the college with each entering class. Over that period of time, though, I began to realize that the landscape was changing an awful lot, that colleges were morphing into something other than just educational places. And out of that changing disposition came a different kind of rhetoric that became apart from the reality of the experience. And it troubled me that consumers were having to try to make fine distinctions about colleges and universities, and in the midst of all of the confusion between the rhetoric and the reality. So I developed some programs 10, 15 years ago while I was still at the college that were intended to try to give families a contextual understanding of how the college admission process worked. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I became with the presentation, and it seemed that audiences liked what I had to say, so that now, 7 years ago, I left the college to begin working on my own, and haven't looked back. So I enjoy the opportunity to take a rather candid view of the process and to help families make good decisions as they plan for their children's educational futures.
Well, you bring a wealth of experience to the table, and I think that for many families, they're going through this for the first time. Mm-hmm. So having opportunity to reach out for resources, whether that be online or through books, through speakers, through college fairs, representatives coming to their schools. Mm-hmm. There's lots of opportunities for students and parents to learn. I know our local public schools often offer parent programs to mm-hmm. come in for understanding what courses to take. When should a student take the SAT? When, mm-hmm. how can they better prepare their child for mm-hmm. the college transition? What factors do you think should drive a student's decision in finding the right college?
Well, one of the things that I do in presenting to a group of students and parents is I try to focus on student-centeredness. I think that the college selection process for many families now has become destination-oriented. I have fun with this. When I talk with groups, I'll ask the students, how many of you have some idea of colleges to which you will apply? And of course, there are lots of students who have begun to think about names of places. And then I ask the parents, how many of you had begun to think of names of colleges the day your children were born? And there's always a chuckle and a murmur, and people understand what I'm talking about. But as parents, that's what we believe our job is to bring these children into the world. We have great expectations. We know what they should achieve, and of course we know where they need to go to college. Quite often, though, we have the answer before we've even met the question. So I think that getting a good start in this college selection process really does require, on the part of the family, a recentering of the attention on the young person. And there are a couple of questions that I urge students to ask themselves, and I urge parents to ask the children as well, that help them find that centeredness. And the first one is a rather simple yet somewhat challenging question for the student, and that is, why do you want to go to college? In your work, I'm sure you've seen lots of young people who get to the threshold of college and nobody's really ever asked them, why do you want to go to college? The intent here is not to try to pin the student down on a particular plan or a particular outcome, medical school, law school, whatever, but it's to help the student understand the importance of education as a foundation for the rest of their future. There's so many young people who head off to college without a real concrete sense of what this experience can and should be. They're doing it because they're supposed to. Their moms and dads are making them go. Everybody goes to college. Wrong reasons. You know, in this country, barely half of the students who begin college in any year will graduate from any college at any time in their lives. Mm-hmm. That's not a good reflection on our college going process, and what I'd like us to do is become more reflective on why. And frankly, as students answer the question why, they begin to take ownership. They begin to understand that this is about me. It's not about mom or dad or my best friend or my teacher. The second question that I find is helpful is to ask the student, what are 3 things that you want to make sure you accomplish by the time you graduate from college? Not high school, but college. And this gets the student to focus on sort of the nitty-gritty. You get past, well, I want to go to a place where I can go to parties, and I want to root for whatever teams, and I want to be near a city. Amazingly, when students answer the question, what are 3 things you want to accomplish, they start to zero in on things like, well, I want to get a good education. I want to find a good education program because I want to be a teacher. I asked my son, he said, I want to learn about chemistry. He said, I want to be able to play my trumpet. As students begin to think about the answer to that question, they identify their priorities. Priorities that they may not find themselves talking about an awful lot, but priorities that are deep within them. And as those priorities emerge in the conversation and they hear their voice talking about these priorities, the priorities then become filters through which they can process all of the information they receive about colleges. And I know that with my own children, that had a very transformative impact. They went from, excuse me, looking at warm weather colleges to big schools in the city to looking at particular places, types of places that would satisfy their academic and personal development needs. There are some other things that I think that students need to think about as they get started. Number one, don't worry about what your major will be. Quite often, students will say, how can I plan to, how can I look for a college if I don't know what my major will be? And parents are saying, you want me to spend how much for 4 years and you don't know what your major will be? Kids who are 16 or 17 or 18 years old and they're still trying to figure out what that major, what that future will look like are normal. And I think we need to remind them of that. I think we need to remind their parents, many of whom did not know exactly what they were going to do. Well, they thought they knew, but they changed their mind many times. But when you're young, your whole life is ahead of you, and college is really that opportunity to discover that part of yourself that you want to invest in more. So I think that kids need to understand that it's okay to be undecided, and maybe you need to find a college that will offer that opportunity for you to explore and discover more about you. I think kids need to be sensitive to 5 elements of a good college fit. And in the book that I've written, Winning the College Admission Game, I talk about this. And real quickly, the best college for the student will be a place that has the program that the student wants to study. The student doesn't know, the program needs to be broad enough to accommodate that. Number 2, the college needs to be a place that will provide a style of instruction that's well suited to the way students like to learn. A lot of kids miss this entirely. They think that all colleges and universities are the same. Big schools, small schools, they're all the same. They're not. They teach the same things, but in many different fashions. So students really need to understand how they function best. And here's a question that students might want to wrestle with as they try to figure out how they like to learn. If you're given the opportunity to take or to produce for a grade in a course, a grade that will be so important as maybe the grade for the whole semester, and the teacher says, would you like to do a project, write a paper, or take a test for that grade? And it's really interesting to hear how students respond, because sometimes they'll say, oh, I want to do a project. Very good. What kinds of colleges do you think are going to give you opportunities to do projects?
Peter, I think this is such a good point, because here in Florida, we have some of the largest universities in the nation. Many of our students,
and great places.
Yeah, and many of our students choose to go to the public schools for cost, and we're going to get to that point in a little bit. But I do find that it is also important for students to think a little bit about how they're going to fare in particularly that first year, because retention is critical at schools, and the transition that students have to go through personally when they go to college can make it even more difficult for them if they feel in the classroom they're not connecting.
Exactly. Well, and that's why I listed as an element of a good fit. And I think related to that, students need to make sure they choose environments where they'll be challenged at the right level in terms of their academic preparation and ability. And a lot of times students just hear the ability part, but preparation is important here too. So if a student is able to perform at a high level and chooses a college that challenges her at this level, that's not a good match, nor is it a good match if the challenge is above the student's head. So finding that fit relative to challenge and preparation ability is important. And to your point too, the best college for student number 4 will be a place that provides a sense of community that feels like home. And that's that sense of accommodation. How does the student fit in? It won't be home necessarily, but will it include people who have shared values and interest, programs that are going to match up well? Students, when they can find that kind of environment, will relax and do better. And then finally, I think the most important element of a good college fit is this: the best college will always be the place that values the student for what he has to offer. That school will be the one that will admit the student, that will give the student the support financially and otherwise that he or she needs, and will be prepared to invest in the student's success. And I think that as long as families are mindful of that notion, as you noted in your introduction, that this is the most important financial investment in a young person's life, let's make it a good investment. Let's put the student in a place where that institution agrees that we want the student to be successful, and this is what we'll do to help make that student successful.
You know, it's interesting in working with particularly juniors about this time of year in the spring when they're really starting to develop their preliminary college lists. Oftentimes they come in with a lot of anxiety because they have an idea of the kind of student they are, and they want to be recognized for that, and they seem to think that by being accepted at a particular type of college will verify their intellectual skill or their value. And in developing a list, I think it's really important for students to think about a range of schools in terms of their chances of admission, so that they can reach for the schools that they think might be a little bit beyond their academic profile. But at the same time, there's schools in their list that may find that they value the student, as you're saying, in ways that they might not have thought about. And it's interesting in then the spring of the senior year, once the application decisions come back, the change that some of them undertake in this process, and recognizing how important that fit really is in not only getting in, but recognizing that the college has appreciated who they are and are willing to nurture that and respect it by perhaps offering them opportunities that they might not get in other places, including financial incentives to attend.
I'd like to tell a quick story that addresses that. I did some travel on the West Coast earlier this fall, and by chance was sitting across the aisle on an airplane from a mother who was traveling with the Stanford University women's volleyball team. Mom's home was in San Diego, and she was involved with the club volleyball program in San Diego, but she liked to travel with her daughter's team. Her daughter was a senior about to graduate, and you would think, young woman, Stanford University, #2 ranked volleyball team in the country, that mom had a lot about which she could be very proud here, and indeed she was, but she wanted to talk about her son. Her son, a few years older, had gone off to college. He was a good but not great athlete, and he had found himself at a place called Dickinson College in Pennsylvania. And she was, when she mentioned that, I know Dickinson College very well because it's a neighboring college to me. And I said, how did he end up there? And she said, he was a very smart boy. And by that she meant not just intellectually smart, but savvy about the process. She said he realized that there were a lot of places where he could go. There were a lot of places where maybe people would say he should go, but he wanted to be in an institution that would value him. So he looked around for institutions that would give him not only the academic opportunity, but the right challenge and the right financial support. And he ended up at a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania that gave him a merit scholarship, that gave him a paid opportunity to study overseas for a year, that gave him what they'll call play money to do some research. She said it cost him less to go to Dickinson College, a school that otherwise cost $50,000 a year. It cost him less to go there for 4 years than it would have for him to go to the University of California, San Diego. So finding that fit is really important. Recognizing what you want to get out of the experience is very important. This is a young man that had a great academic experience at a place that many of his classmates probably never heard of, but he got over that. And this is to your point. I think early in the process, students see the list that they develop as validation of their self-worth. And certainly parents are doing the same thing. Parents go to work, they go to the club, wherever they are, and they like to talk about where my son is applying to college, as though that establishes me somewhere in the pecking order. The reality is going to be something different. And I think that kids need to look at lists that make sense given what they want to accomplish. It's Frank Sachs, who is the director of college counseling at the Blake School in Minnesota, had been the president of the National Association of College Admission Counseling. He said at one time, he said, the choice of a college is really not about a prize, it's about a good fit. And we have to get families to reposition their thought from the prize to the fit.
Well, I think that parents often struggle with trying to figure out what their role in this should be. I know that I have talked with many parents of 9th and 10th graders because they recognize that the GPA starts in grade 9 and that it's time to really start to do the homework, to try to stay focused on the academics, and that the GPA is something that will stick with them, and that's going to be one of the criteria that many colleges use. In fact, for many colleges, they say that it's one of the top criteria that they look at is the overall GPA as well as the progression of marks that a student might earn. But What tips would you offer parents in terms of how they can support their children as they look ahead to college?
I think that it's important for parents to encourage students to grow. What college admission officers are looking for is incremental growth, academically and otherwise, throughout high school. And you're absolutely right. As soon as a student becomes a high school freshman, he becomes a college applicant, whether he knows it or not. Everything counts. And kids are going to stumble and fall, and the important thing that parents need to do is recognize that it is a process, it's not an event. And if you recognize that the high school experience is a process, you help your child get up, dust them off, and keep them moving. I think the wrong thing to do is to keep pushing. And sometimes when the child's fallen down and the parent keeps pushing, basically you run over that child, and you cause all kinds of other psychological issues that are harder to deal with later on. I think another thing parents need to remember is this: each of our children comes to the realization of future at a different time and in a different way in their lives. Some kids are all about college and future by the time they get to high school, and others, I can't tell you how often I talk to parents who say, I've got a student who's starting the senior year and I don't think he's thinking about college. What should we do? What can we do? That's okay. He might not be ready for college right after high school. Maybe he needs to take some time to find focus and some ideas about what he'd like to do next. And you know, the student who takes the gap year or two, but then enters college when he's ready, is going to do very well.
I'm glad you mentioned the gap year, because I do think that there's somehow many students feel like they're on this race to get through high school and to take as many college level classes they can while they're in high school, so they can move into undergraduate college, so that they can move on to graduate school. And often they're looking at fast track programs to try to get through college quickly with a combination BA, MA degree, or a 7-year medical program. But the gap year allows students really to take some time to think about who they are and where they're headed, and to really find themselves, I think, and offers some students just times to relax. I'd like to mention that finding gap year programs can be difficult, and I have developed a website, which one of the buttons on my website goes to gap year. So there's lots of that's hyperlinked to a variety of different things where students can go off and do community service programs, or they could do a language immersion program. They could live with a family abroad. They could do work at an eco farm in Australia. They could do a program with an organization that allows students to do research, whether it be through engineering or whether through marine science. Sometimes students will work and do community service in their local communities. AmeriCorps is another thought. So there's lots of options, and anyway, the collegecounseling.com website has that option on there to go and take a look, as well as summer enrichment programs that help students to think a little bit what they might do during their summers.
I think what kids, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but young people need to remember is that they have one chance in their lives to be teenagers and young adults. And they may be full of that life experience right now, but it's going to go very quickly. And all of a sudden they become 20-something, 30-something, 40-something-year-olds, and they look back and they say, boy, I wish I would have known then what I know now, or I wish I would have done things differently. I think that one of the things, and this is for moms and dads to hear as well, you want to avoid the prescribed life. Let the kids live. Let the passion emerge in a young person's life. It may lead to that gap year. It may lead to different things that the student does in high school. And colleges that are trying to make fine distinctions aren't looking for the litany of things that the student has done. They're looking for the authenticity, the fact that this is a young person who's really enjoyed life and has kind of written her own script along the way.
That leads into a question that I have, and that at this time of year, some of the most highly selective colleges will release their admissions decisions. Many students and parents complain about the unpredictability of the outcomes of these decisions. What are your thoughts about the transparency of how these decisions are made?
Well, it drives me nuts. I think that a lot of elite institutions now are driven more by trying to maintain their level of competitiveness among themselves than they are about necessarily making or affecting good outcomes for young people. When you consider, number one, that most students who apply to most colleges are good. Like 90% at any, you name it, college could do the work. Maybe Phi Beta Kappa level, maybe not quite so high, but 90% can do the work. That means that a lot of these places that are saying no to 80%, 70% of their applicants, they're saying no to kids who are very, very well qualified. And what the young person needs to understand is that it's an arbitrary process. And what the institution is doing is looking at this large pool of candidates that is good. And they're saying, okay, as we build our community, who do we want? Who will fit a particular role in the community best for us? This is not, and it should not be construed as a reflection of an individual's self-worth. It has to do with an institution's agenda and how an individual fits that agenda. Sadly, colleges are not good at articulating their agendas. They try to be all things to all people. They try to accommodate as many applicants as possible because the end game for colleges is to look selective, to be selective, to be where they can be in the rankings.
Well, thank you, Peter. I'm hoping that this first segment will be one that will be helpful to you as you plan at home. Thank you, Peter, for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is fun, and I really appreciate what you're doing. I think that your efforts in the community will make a great difference in helping young people and their parents understand what's possible. So good luck to you. And if I might plug real quickly, the admissiongame.com is a website that I've been using for a while. The blog that you mentioned is available to folks free on that website, and there's some other resources that folks might check out too. So I think the more we can get people into the conversation that you're beginning here, the better for everyone.
Oh, thank you. There's some wonderful resources available to students and parents, and the web has opened up an awful lot of opportunities. So I do hope that you will check out both the websites for further information. A college education is the largest investment a person ever makes in themselves. Future programs in the series will cover tips for middle and high school students in preparing for college, financing a college education, staying on track with a college application process for juniors and seniors, and the state of college admissions in our Florida public colleges and universities. Thank you for joining us.